Now we're looking at public policy effects on firm size and firm decision making. So you start out with perfect competition. You start out with perfect competition where entrepreneurs, depending on their subjective risk preferences, are exchanging with each other through the market. Individual entrepreneurs, assuming the perfect competition assumptions, but then we know that the future uncertainty, 19 on future, is unknown and unknowable. So therefore, you get the emergence of a firm to hire and fire at will. And so let's say that, for example, here's a firm that's making electric guitars. And they've outsourced everything. All they do is they get them imported. They're manufactured in China. They get them imported to their warehouse, and then they distribute it. So the only stage of production they have is distribution. But then let's say that it turns out that the assembly that's being done, and I'm just using this reducto ad absurdum, I have no idea, I'm just making a rhetorical point here. I'm not telling you that this is actually how it works or this is a real example. But let's say that they find out that the assembly is being done in one of these Uyghur concentration camps in Western China. And so the people who would buy their electric guitars don't want to buy them because they don't want Muslim Chinese enslaved labor. So then the firm would then combine here. Right? So now the firm is not just doing distribution, but they're doing assembly. Or let's say that they get a tax break from the they get a tax break and subsidies from the state of Tennessee to locate their assembly plant there. Or for whatever reason, you get firm integration, in this case, vertical integration. So the firm finds it efficient due to asset specificity or for whatever reason, whatever public policy incentive, in this case the public policy incentive would be economic development subsidies. Right? So now you have the firm. Then so in 1914, yeah.
I was just going to say, so if this is vertical integration, what is the difference with horizontal integration?
Horizontal integration would be things like geography, East Coast, West Coast, North and South, Asia, Europe, Africa. And it would be, say, product, and then you have marketing, and then, you buy the computer and then buy our insurance, right? So warranties, guarantees. Another example would be, I like to use is price, place, people, promotion, and policy. That would be horizontal integration. And vertical integration would be along the stages of production.
Mm-hmm. So
with that in mind, in 1914 you have I've got to get a drink of water. So in 1914, you get the income tax introduced. And so then the income tax is both corporate and personal income tax, as we looked at under this absentee ownership scenario. So one incentive for the firm to grow large is, let's say now, here's the firm Robotics. They buy from they're doing the research and design in-house, the design in-house. They've outsourced the mining, the raw materials, and then the robotics to make the parts that are assembled. So they've outsourced robotics, but then this firm sells it here and they have to pay income tax, right? This firm has to pay income tax. So now our firm that makes the electric guitars, they realize, hey, wait a minute, this firm that does the robotics has to pay income tax, therefore they're charging us more. So now they have an incentive to vertically integrate again, right? Now, under the perfect competition model, when you have all these atomistic entrepreneurs exchanging with each other, that's market pricing, right? Supply and demand in the market, getting the best quality, the best price, emerge optimal properties. But now when you start combining within a firm, you no longer have market signals. You have proxy for market signals. And that's when subjective opportunity cost becomes important, because it's no longer individuals trading with each other using price signals. You're now getting within firm transfers. Everyone see that? So the larger the firm becomes, now let's say you have a fully integrated firm. The larger the firm becomes, the more political transfers you have within the firm. And the less, so that can explain why large firms are less innovative and less efficient, because the tax code in this case has encouraged them to grow too large, and the transfers between the stages of production are no longer based on market prices, they're based on subjective opportunity costs and political decision making within the firm. Now, we've already looked at how monetary policy and financialization of the economy creates, or monetary policy and the tax code, again, the income tax. Debt is a write-off on the tax code, so therefore firms, large firms, issue debt and also vertically integrate, because they now have that's mergers and acquisitions. You're getting a lot of IPOs today during the unprecedented easy money since 2008. You're getting a lot of IPOs. You're getting a lot of mergers and acquisitions because of the easy money and the write-off of debt on the tax code. Yeah? You want to see that? Yeah, so the firms are growing too large, integrated, inefficient, with political distribution along the stages of production instead of market distribution.
So I understand the concerns regarding easy money within the market.
Yeah.
Can't you argue that it's a good thing that there's more companies taking out in the economy, the jobs keep created, and there's more innovation in the industry?
With easy money?
Yeah.
Well, easy money, we talked about this already, easy money is regressive because some of it, half of it's channeled into the stock market prices, equity prices, but half of it's priced into the final goods and services. And so those with less disposable income have to pay more for final goods and services, while large firms who get the easy money become large and inefficient. So yeah, and which then brings up the next point, which is fiscal policy. So now we've had, how much? $3.6 trillion in bailouts in the last 6 months, fiscal policy. And that's a form of political capitalism. So instead of these firms which have grown too large and too inefficient, going bankrupt, they get bailed out, right? So you've got, I mean, the university is a good example. The university, because of all the government guaranteed student loans, the university administrative staff has grown way too large. Way too many associate deans and things like that. And the same thing would apply to firms. Way too many people along the stages of production which are politically appointed. Instead of market pricing, you get political pricing. So yes, on the one hand, easy money creates mergers and acquisitions and IPOs, but are those really valuable? And it doesn't that just devalue the purchasing power of the money and lower your standard of living in the long run? It's a bubble. You know, what form is the bubble popping going to take? Who knows? Like we said before, it could be just be long-term declining standards of living as the fiat money becomes worth less and less. So, good. Any other questions? How about overseas? Do you have any questions on this? Firm political policy effects on firm size and decision making. So we've talked about the different policies that determine the size of the firm. So I'll give you an example. Now this story may or may not be true, but I'll just use it as an example. So my dad has a Harvard MBA in 1954, and marketing was really big. You know, the man in the gray flannel suit, right? The 1950s American corporate culture was really big. Yeah, and so my dad was a corporate executive in marketing or distribution, and he worked see, what did he do? He invented microwave meals, for example, and he invented taking packaging rice, wheat, corn, grits, taking it from a wholesale raw material stage of production. So he worked for a company called Consolidated Agriculture, which was the fifth, controlled 5% of the world's food market. And so my dad controlled the retail part. So he was executive vice president for consumer products in this large company. And he would have to get his materials from, in this case, the packaging grits, for example. He would have to get his materials from within the corporation. Instead of sourcing it the cheapest price worldwide, he had to source it within the corporation. So he had a lot of employees, and this branch was paid on profit sharing. Profit sharing. So he went to the board of directors, and he said, so all these different stages, depending how the firm is made up, all these different stages of production incentivize their employees different ways. In this case, these different departments have profit sharing for those that work within those departments. And so my dad went to the board of directors. We'll be looking at firm management and asymmetrical information, and also related to the financialization that we're talking about. So he went to the board of directors and says, wait a minute, I don't want to have to buy those overpriced raw materials for my consumer products. I want to be able to go out to the market and source them. And the board of directors said, no, you have to buy it within the firm, so he quit. So, any comments on that? So, firms become too big, and it becomes political distribution of resources instead of market distribution of resources. And then today, with the state determining essential services, essential businesses, certain bailouts for certain companies, you end up with political capitalism or corporatism. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Yes, sir.
A little bit unrelated. Do you think the situation of like the European Central Bank, do you think they handle it better? Or
The European Central Bank?
Yeah, do you think they handle it better?
The European Central Bank's even worse than the United States in terms of declining purchasing power of their currency because they have negative rates of interest. At least the U.S. has positive rates of interest now. When you have negative rates of interest,
In Germany, right?
the European Union is all one monetary policy. Yeah. Germany does not, well, the reason Germany wanted a more tight monetary policy is because they had hyperinflation and that led to Hitler. But now, never let a good crisis go to waste, so now everybody's competing to beggar thy neighbor and devalue their currency. Any questions overseas about public policy effects and firm size and firm decision making? Thank you.